So there was a problem last year that I think a lot of people started talking about as the season went on. But the interesting thing is, as the season went on, that problem actually started to fix itself. But we had already been rolling on the train, and it had already kind of started. And I think these are the kind of things where you need to look at the sample size as a whole in order to determine if it actually is a problem. And there were some questions to Ben Johnson about the third quarter scoring woes of the Detroit Lions last year. And so it's a very interesting question to me because the Detroit Lions, it's not like they were just an awful offensive team in the third quarter. They ranked 20th out of 32 teams in scoring in the third quarter, but that's not even close to what they did early on because they were second in first quarter scoring. So they came out of the gates ready to go, right? And they were seventh in second quarter scoring. Now, overall, I believe they were fifth in scoring offense. And when I say I believe, they were. All right. They averaged 27.1 points per game. And they had the third best touchdown rate in the red zone. But starting the second half of games was an issue. All right. So here's basically what we're looking at. The first 10 games of the season. I don't believe the Lions scored an opening second half, third quarter touchdown. It just didn't happen. And so all of us were like, what is going on? Because you start to see these trends happen. All right. So he didn't dodge the question. It came via SI.com. And here's what he had to say when they said, hey, what's going on with the third quarters? And he said, I love the football questions. This is great. This is good. I did this a couple of months ago, so I'm spitballing a little bit here. I don't have the numbers exactly in my head, but I got it. I know what the third quarter says. Overall, third quarter was not good enough for us. I didn't watch every single snap from that particular quarter. We did go back. We studied the opening drive of the second half. We did do that, said Johnson. So he's saying, like, look, guys, I didn't go and look at every single snap from the third quarter, but we did go back and we looked at the opening drive. He said there's a significant difference from the first 10 games of the season to the last 10 games of the season and how we were opening the drive of the second half. So we go into some specifics here. But first, let me just explain a couple of things. All right, the Detroit Lions only had a 17-game regular schedule. So why did he go 10-10? We had 3 playoff games. So he's including the playoff games in this, which I love. He just is acting like it's part of the season because it is. Maybe stats don't count for long term, all right, and all that kind of stuff. They don't get added to your regular season stat total, but the playoffs are absolutely important, and they are part of what you did as a team as a whole last year. You have to do that. Think about it. As fans, what's the most important thing to us? I promise you it was the wild card and divisional round wins. I promise you that was what was most important to us fans, not going 12-5 in the regular season. So why in the world would he knock those games out as well? But Ben Johnson also believes that there is a great trend in the second half, and he backed it up a little bit. So let's go back to what he said, again, not dodging the question. He said we were significantly better in the second half of the season, all right, including playoffs. The last 10 games, I want to say those 10 games, those possessions, we scored 5 touchdowns, which is 50% of your drives are going for touchdowns. You're doing something right. So we're going to keep going on this quote in a second. But he's right. Like, if you are going to score on 50% of your opening drives in the second half, you are doing something right. I agree with that. The problem is we still only average just over 4 points in the third quarter. So if you scored an opening drive touchdown on exactly half your games, while on the other half you didn't score at all, you'd be averaging 3.5 points per quarter. So it's not just opening drives of the third quarter that we're not scoring. We're not getting a lot of points in general in the third quarter. And when we had the defense that we had last year, we were lucky to get away with it. Some of it is that we were opening up big leads. I understand that. So the defense was coming out ready pumped up, not our defense, theirs, right? Excited to fire on all cylinders. But that's where good teams make the difference. Look, I love seeing us high in first quarter scoring. I love the way we finished games last year. But if you can put stuff together in the middle, it makes stuff a lot less worrisome. Okay, he goes. So you're doing something right. So I understand what's going on out there. I do think it was something we talked about, we addressed during the season, and we started to see some results as the season went on. So if you separate it up that way, I think we're trending in the right direction. And here at Sideline Report, they did do some things to back it up. They did not score a point on any opening drives of the second half of their first 10 games. From that point on, Thanksgiving through the playoffs, they scored 5 drives to start the second half. So Ben Johnson said he didn't have the exact numbers in front of him, but like all good coaches do, they knew the exact numbers. That's exactly what happens. It didn't completely go away, but it appears they figured something out. So the answer that Ben Johnson kind of had, it didn't say we're working on stuff right now. He didn't say that. But what he did say was pretty simply, hey, look, we've already kind of fixed it. So I understand what you guys are saying. I get it. But we've already started to fix this thing a little bit. However, we also had a lead going into halftime. What were we up? 28-7, something like that. I think we were up 18 points. I don't know. Anyways, we were up on the 49ers. I try and wipe that game out of my memory. Yeah, the defense gave up points, but the offense didn't score. And so while this wasn't a huge issue going down the stretch, it did once again become an issue to prevent us from getting to the Super Bowl. So I do think like we need to look at that as well. And I'm just going to pull up the box score from that game because I don't want to be wrong here. So as I'm talking, I was pulling up the box score. Hopefully I didn't stutter and stammer too much. When you look at this game, we're up 24-7 going into half. All right, remember you had C.J. Gardner-Johnson waving goodbye at just, that drove me nuts, and all this kind of stuff. And then the third quarter, 17-0 49ers. So this was the difference. And I understand you can be like, all right, well, then it was a tie game going into the fourth, and we lost 10-7. It should never have been a tie game going into the fourth. Because our offense had proven that they could score. They did it again in the fourth quarter. And if all we did was score a touchdown in that third quarter, this is a victory. So I understand why it might not be that massive of a thing where you're like, oh no, we kind of got it figured out. But it came back to bite you at the most important time. Look, I want to be all sunshine and rainbows and lollipops and all that kind of stuff like every other Lions fan. But there are some weaknesses that we have to address. I think, quite frankly, I know this sounds weird, addressing the defense will help the offense, and especially in the third quarter, because I think a lot of what you had was the defense starting to get tired, whether it was lack of depth, lack of talent, and so we just didn't have the ball as much in the third quarter. Just didn't have it as much. So if we didn't score on our opening drive, we were very limited in other opportunities. So yeah, that's kind of what my thought process is here. And let's hope that Ben Johnson has figured it out this year because we know he stayed and we're happy he stayed. And I might be doing a video on why he stayed later. It might be old news by now, but some of you haven't heard it. So stay tuned for that as well. All right. Thanks so much for watching. See you on the next one.